Now what we'll do is we'll move to the next topic. Also, some of you might have a question that this law is also misused, right? I mean, that's also a genuine concern. There have been instances where this law is misused, and if a law is being misused, does that imply that we should not have a law? That might not be correct. If a law is misused, we have to find out how this misuse can be prevented, right? We need to have this law because there are like 100 genuine cases, right? For 100 genuine cases, maybe you'll have 2 or 3 instances where this law is being misused. But for these 2 or 3 instances of misuse, the remaining 100 women, they are not getting the justice. That might not be, I mean, that might not be the right way to go ahead with it. So, and again, here also we have had different kinds of guidelines from the judiciary. For example, again, whenever there is any such complaint of domestic violence, ideally, whoever is the official, right, they should make themselves convinced that yes, there has been an instance of domestic violence. Then only they should go forward, right? So maybe some form of caution can be used here. Find out where are the loopholes, maybe address that. That might be a better solution rather than scrapping the law completely. So, in case you have queries related to that. Now let's move to the next topic: future of cooperatives in India. So, this is a very important topic for multiple reasons. One is, yes, it is part of your sociology paper 2, rural and agrarian transformation. Second reason being, if you have been following the news in the last few days, a particular committee has been formed by the government, right? Suresh Prabhu, who was, I mean, a former minister, Suresh Prabhu has been given the task of finding out ways by which cooperatives can be, finding out ways by which cooperatives can play a more significant role. And the committee has been given the task of finding out what are some of the issues in the cooperatives, how can we address that. Also, if you would have noticed, a new ministry was also formed for cooperatives. So the present government has mentioned cooperatives multiple times. The present government has also come up with some, or is planning to come up with a policy related to cooperatives. Also, they have created a ministry of cooperatives. So cooperatives have been in the news, right? And generally in sociology paper 2, they ask you some of these contemporary things. So what we will do is I'll break it down into parts. First, we will understand what is cooperatives. I'll not spend too much time here, given that some of you have already some idea of cooperatives because general studies paper 2. Then we will look at the evolution of cooperatives, the evolution of cooperative movement in India. Here I will spend some time. There was a recent article in EPW which talked about the evolution of cooperatives, cooperative movement in India, basically pre-independence and after independence. So we'll give some time to this, and then we will also look at some of the positives, issues of cooperatives, and we'll also look at some potential solutions. Sociologists have extensively studied cooperative in India, different kinds of cooperatives in India, and they look at what are the different kinds of dynamics within the cooperatives. What are the caste dynamics? What are the power dynamics? Maybe some of these societal factors are hindering the performance of cooperatives, right? So we'll also refer to some of these case studies, Bhaviskar, A.R. Desai, right? Daniel Thorner. So they have looked at multiple angles within cooperatives. So we'll look at those sociological perspectives as well. So let's get started. What is cooperative? Few elements here. Cooperative implies a group of people who have some common economic needs, they have a common economic interest, they voluntarily agree to pool their resources, and these resources can be both human and material, so that they can benefit each other. There is mutual benefit. And in this process, or how are they doing this benefit? They are doing this by creating an enterprise. But this enterprise is being run on democratic lines. So people have a say in the functioning of the cooperative, in the operation of a cooperative. So I'll just reiterate. What is cooperative? A group of people. This group of people, why they have come together? Because they have some common economic objective. Example, let's think of some common example, Amul, right? So you have a cooperative which is selling milk products. But how are they doing it? There's a cooperative of dairy farmers. Right? This cooperative is collecting milk from the dairy farmers. It is converting it into different kinds of products. It is converting it into such products which have a longer shelf life. And these products are being marketed throughout the length and breadth of the country. Just think of it. There is definitely an economic interest here, right? These farmers on their own, if they wanted to sell their milk products, how difficult it would have been? How many customers they would have got around them? An individual farmer, they will have multiple restrictions. Individual dairy farmer, multiple restrictions, multiple limitations, challenges. But once they are coming together, they're becoming powerful. They are becoming economies of scale. So group of people, they're coming together, they have some common economic interest. They are pooling their resources. These resources can be both human or material resource. Maybe they're just contributing money. Maybe they're just contributing their labor. Right? So whatever the case, they're pooling in the resources, and the idea is we will help each other out. There is mutual benefit. It's not something for our own interest. Your own interest will also be protected. But what is important is we will all help each other out. We'll all get benefit in the process. And they are basically setting up an enterprise. A cooperative is an enterprise. But the difference is this enterprise is managed on democratic lines. People have a say. Whoever is part of the cooperative, they have a say. Right? All the different dairy farmers, they will be having some say. It's not that people have a say. Whoever is part of the cooperative, they have a say. Right? All the different dairy farmers, they will be having some say. It's not that the day-to-day operations, they are the one, everyone will be deciding. But what they do is within a cooperative, these members, they will elect a board. The board takes the decisions. Where will these products be sold? What kind of products will be sold? What should be the long-term strategy of this cooperative? The board does that. But the board is at the end of the day appointed by all the members of the cooperative. They're elected by all the members of the cooperative. Right? So if the general body thinks that this board is not doing well, they then throw them out. They will elect some other board. So there is democracy within the cooperatives. So this is how cooperatives look like. This is the definition of cooperative. Now, let's look at some features. Quickly, we will see the features. Now, just 1 second. Yeah, let's look at some of the features. A cooperative is an association of persons. Right? You have a group of people that link with one another. It's a business enterprise. Right? So there is some economic activity at the end of the day. So there will be some business happening. It's a voluntary enterprise. Those who are part of the cooperative, they're part of it on their own. There is no such coercive element over there. They're free to join, they're free to leave. It is voluntary. It's a democratic enterprise. Already have explained that. The motto is to serve rather than to earn. It's not that they want to, it's not that they don't want to earn, they want to make profits. But what is more important is helping each other out. They have to make profits, by the way. If they don't make profits, they will not be able to help each other out. So mutual help, self-help, equality and equity, these are all principles of cooperatives. Now what do we mean by this? We saw that within a cooperative, different members, they have to contribute their resources. Right? They have to pool in their resources. So some members, they might contribute more. Some members will contribute less. So the benefits from the cooperatives is shared among the members. But how they share? They share in an equitable manner. Those who contribute more will get more. Those who contribute less will get less. Like if there is one dairy farmer who has a lot of cattle and one dairy farmer who has less number of cattle. So the contribution of the one who has a lot of cattle, this farmer is having more contribution, so accordingly will get more rewards. And again, cooperatives aim for socio-economic change. They also aim to serve the community in a sustainable way. So these are all different features of cooperative. Now, what is the advantage of cooperative? Those small farmers, those who are less privileged, right? For them, it is a way by which they can start an enterprise or they can participate in enterprise. These are all ways by which you are trying to generate income. Individually, if you are setting up an enterprise, it is very difficult. But if you are coming together, you get some form of benefits, right? So different kinds of socio-economic whatever inequalities are there, right? Despite that, those who are at the bottom, right, they can participate in these organizations, in these institutions, and they benefit. Another is the intermediaries are eliminated. Cooperatives, with the help of cooperatives, different kinds of intermediaries, middlemen, they are eliminated. I'll give you an example. Let's say there is a cooperative, which is a consumer cooperative. So what do? Let's say there are some farmers who are producing some agricultural commodities. Now, whatever they produce, it does not reach the market directly. There will be n number of intermediaries between them. So the farmers will sell it to someone. Let's say the farmers are selling it to X, the X will sell it to Y, Y will sell it to Z. And finally, Z will sell it to the retail customer. So between the producers and the consumers, there are so many intermediaries. And all of them will have their own cut. All of them will make some profits. So what is happening? Let's say the producer, cost of production was 10 rupees. The producer sold it to X at 15 rupees. X sold it to Y at maybe 20 rupees. Y sold it to Z at maybe 25 rupees. Z sold it to the final consumer at maybe 35 rupees. So the producer is getting just 5 rupees of profit. Consumer is paying 35 rupees. So there is a massive difference, right? There are a lot of people in between who are intermediaries. What can a cooperative do here? Let's say there is a cooperative of consumers. Some consumers, they form their own cooperative and they decide that we will directly procure it from the producers. So these consumers, they created their own enterprise, the consumer cooperatives, and they purchase it from the producers at maybe 15 rupees or maybe at even a cheaper price because they are now purchasing in bulk. So that way, the things for which they were paying 35 rupees, now it can be done at 15 rupees. So the consumers are getting benefited. All these intermediaries were eliminated in the process. So there is also one more advantage of cooperatives. Helps the weaker section of the population. Also, the different kinds of limitations that there are in markets, inequalities, exploitation, cooperatives address that because everyone is having some form of power within the cooperatives, right? It is democratically controlled. So these are some of the advantages. Now, let's try to understand how the cooperative sector has evolved in the Indian context. Now, this is important because, again, this is something which was there in the equitable article. So it traces the origin, emergence, and development of cooperatives in India. So before independence, what happened? After independence, what has happened? So before independence, you can divide the phase into multiple phases, right? Before 1947. So cooperative movement in India started somewhere in 1904. So first stage is 1904 to 1901. Then you had this is the stage where you had the origin of cooperatives, emergence of cooperatives. After that, there is a phase where you had sudden expansion of cooperatives. Many cooperatives emerged, and these cooperatives emerged in multiple sectors. They carried out a range of activities. Since you are now having a sudden expansion, what will happen in the next phase? You realize that, okay, massive expansion was there, but now maybe some of these cooperatives are not working as expected. Many of these things are not fulfilling the purpose of a cooperative. So then you had a phase of unplanned expansion. Hurried expansion, then unplanned expansion. They're expanding, but they are not necessarily fulfilling the purposes of cooperatives. Then next phase, you realize that there's massive losses. Some of these cooperatives are sick, they're not viable. Right? So this is the phase where consolidation is happening, reorganization is happening. And then the period of recovery. So we'll look at each of these phases and we'll look at what legal changes happened at each of these points. First stage, 1904 onwards, this is the stage where cooperatives started emerging. And these cooperatives emerged in the agricultural sector. Point to be noted here is government back then, it played a very significant role. The government provided different kinds of loans so that these cooperatives can emerge. Right? So supported by the government. So government is playing a role, right? It is doing that hand holding. Next phase, in this phase, what happened was the different kinds of rules, regulations were there. They were made easier. Many of these rules, regulations were relaxed. Tax rules, stamp duty, registration fees, all these things are relaxed. So what will happen? It now becomes way more easier to start cooperatives. So now there is an expansion of cooperatives. The number of cooperatives are increasing. And now you are having cooperatives in multiple sectors. Education, housing, banking. For example, you can have a housing cooperative. So what will happen? People will come together, they will purchase an area, some land, plot of land. On that land, they will construct different houses. They will pay money and they will pool in their resources. They will construct houses, and once the houses are completed, once the construction is over, they will divide it amongst themselves. Take one house for this person, another house for someone else. These are all housing cooperatives. Similarly, you have banking cooperatives. What happens in these banking cooperatives? People come together, they form these cooperatives, they pool in their resources, they will give money to these cooperatives. If they need money urgently, these cooperatives will give them money. So when they are pooling in their money, why they are pooling in their money? Because they will get a high rate of interest. Why are they taking money out of the cooperatives? Why are they taking loan from the cooperatives? Because maybe they're not getting money from the formal financial channels, the commercial banks that you have. So here, it might be easy for them to get money, but the rate of interest will be high. So risk is more, as at the same time, rate of interest is also more. So all these cooperatives are coming up. But since now there is a massive expansion of cooperatives, one committee at that point of time, in 1915, Maclagan committee, it is now saying that you should possibly exercise some form of concern, some form of caution. You should not just form cooperatives. It warned against the hurried expansion. It is saying that form cooperatives only when people understand the cooperative principles. They should not form cooperatives just like that. So this kind of a warning is coming up at this point of time. Now the next phase, 1919 onwards. See, 1919, some form of constitutional reforms started. Montego-Chelmsford reforms, if you remember. So the different kinds of subjects that you have, union list, state list, right? Right now our constitution has those things, right? At that point of time, also different kinds of subjects were there. The way the subjects were distributed, it is now changing in 1919. And cooperatives are now becoming provincial subjects. It means that now cooperatives will be regulated by the provinces, what we call states right now, which implies that you will not have one law governing cooperatives throughout the length and breadth of the country. Different states will have their own laws, right? So this is what is that unplanned expansion phase. So different states now, Bombay, Madras, Odisha, they are all creating their own cooperative laws to govern the cooperatives within their jurisdiction. The next phase, 1929 to 1939. What happened 1929 onwards? You had the Great Depression, economic collapse world over. India is also getting impacted. Different cooperatives in India are also getting impacted. Why? There is crash in prices. So different kinds of goods and services that cooperatives provided, they're not getting returns. They're not able to sell these goods. Even if they're able to sell these goods, they're not getting money out of it. They're not profitable. Right? So different kinds of agricultural goods fall in prices. So growth of cooperatives is now getting hampered. But the important thing that happened was in 1935, RBI came up. Reserve Bank of India was set up. Now, what is the purpose of RBI? Right? It is a banking regulator. But at the same time, why do we have banks? One of the reasons you have banks is to ensure that people have access to finances. So RBI is now coming up with different ways, or it is now thinking about different ways. How can we increase agricultural credit? Right? So different kinds of studies. Why access to credit is not there in agricultural sectors? What can be done about it? So all these things is going to benefit cooperatives later on. So 1939 to 1947, this is again the phase where you have rapid progress. Why? What happened in 1939? Or what started in 1939? 1939 to 1945, you had the war, World War, right? World War II. So how come war is something which is benefiting cooperatives? See, sometimes wars or some sectors can get benefited because of war. Cooperatives got benefited because during wars, again, prices go up. And the kind of goods cooperatives provided, they got a good return. So prices went up of different agricultural commodities, and some of these cooperatives are benefited. Now, if you want to understand the impact of war, how sometimes war can be good for the economy. I'm not saying war is always good for the economy. Sometimes you can just look at how US economy benefited during World War II. What you can do is you can just search for US GDP before war, World War II, and after war. In US during the World War II, the GDP expanded like anything. Government spending increased. They spent on so many sectors. Innovation also increased during World War II. They came up with new kind of things. Right? They for their war efforts, they required different kinds of equipment. They invested a lot on that, and all these things led to increase in GDP. Right? But yeah, again, it is not the impact will not be the same for every country. Maybe US benefited, but there will be so many other countries which whose economy would have been in ruins because of the war. The point here is some sectors might get benefited during wars, and cooperatives are getting benefited. So this is how during the pre-independence phase things look like for the cooperative sector. After independence, what is happening? After we got independent, what approach we had when it comes to economic development? So India went ahead with the planned economic approach. That means at the center level, we will plan. We'll decide what resources should be distributed where, which sector should be given how much attention, which state should have how much resources. So all these things are centralized. This is something which is exactly opposite to a market-led approach, right? Where markets decide, right, where which sector should get how much amount of resources. So we went ahead with command and control economy. And in this economy, in this model of economic development, the role of cooperatives was considered very significant. Cooperatives should have a significant role. Why is it the case? It was felt that cooperatives give bargaining power to those who are from the weaker sections. Those who are the small farmers, households, cottage industries, they benefit through the process of through cooperatives if they're part of these cooperatives. So cooperatives were considered to be one of those most important kind of organization institutions, and they were supported by the different plans. But it became part of our planning process. So this is the first thing. Second thing is, there was an institution called as the National Development Council. Now again, it doesn't exist. Planning Commission whatever plans used to come up with, right? They used to go to the National Development Council before. Now Planning Commission is not there, National Development Council is not there. They have all been replaced by think tank, which is the NITI Aayog. So back then, the National Development Council recommended that we should have a national policy as well on cooperatives. It suggested that personnel should be trained for this. So what you can observe here is that cooperatives were given utmost importance. The Planning Commission, the plans, National Development Council, all of them are talking about cooperatives. In 1984, another law was passed, Multi-State Cooperative Societies Act. So at this point of time, we have multiple laws governing cooperatives. State level, all the different states had their own laws. Cooperative was a state subject. But then you might have a cooperative which is having its presence across multiple states. So in that case, how will it be managed? Which law will be applicable to these cooperatives? So there are these confusions. So this law came into being to ensure that you have some form of policy certainty, to reduce the conflicts between multiple jurisdictions. Now, after this, in 2002, a national policy on cooperatives was initiated, and it said that there should be enough support for cooperatives. Some regions in India, you will have a lot of cooperatives. Some regions in India, you don't have. There is regional imbalance. We need to address that. Also, cooperative education, training, human resource development should be the focus area. And the last major initiative happened in 2011. Cooperatives became part of Constitution. So cooperatives are given constitutional status. So Constitution was amended, and there were certain features which were included within the Constitution. Right to formation of cooperatives, it became a fundamental right, Article 19. Directive principles of state policy. There also you added a provision that states should promote cooperative societies, right? And cooperative societies, they were added to one part of the Constitution. So what I want to mention here is, cooperatives have been given due attention by the governments. Now, whether they have been given due attention by the governments or by the politicians who hold different government positions, that might be slightly different, but we'll come to that in a while. But the point is, yes, we have had different kinds of policies governing cooperatives. Now, there's one question by Sumitra: why British government supported cooperatives? See, again, it's not that British government was not trying to bring about different kind of governance reforms. They're also doing that. If you look at it, way back, right, urban governance reforms and all, they initiated it. So here also they realize that in the agricultural sector, right, people do not have access to resources. How will people have access to resources? How will you direct credit to some of these sectors? Maybe through cooperatives. So they identified that and they were providing that. I mean, they were helping create cooperatives so that agricultural credit can be there. So that was the main aim. So don't think that Britishers did not bring about any change, or Britishers did not want any change. They were doing that. In some cases they were benefiting, in some cases, just like, I mean, therefore, at the end of the day, it's their government, right? So they came up with different policies, and one of those policies was formation of cooperatives. So now, this is how situation looks like. But is it all rosy? Is it all good? Even though we saw there are policies related to cooperatives, is everything fine? Now, within cooperatives, there are multiple issues. What are those issues? See, cooperatives get loans. Cooperatives again give loans. So cooperatives might get finance from some financial institutions. They will again lend it to members. Sometimes the difference in interest rate is huge. If you are getting loans from outside, it might be very expensive, and if you are getting loans from here, it might be very less. So sometimes the rate at which cooperatives are provided funds, as well as the rates charged to borrowers, they're kept much below rates applicable to other borrowers. So it leads to a situation where funds can be diverted. It might be highly profitable to divert funds. So whatever is the purpose of forming cooperatives, you are possibly missing out on that. At the union level, you have a policy for cooperatives, but at the end of the day, you have all these things have to be implemented at the state level. So it leads to a situation where there is lax enforcement. Different kinds of loopholes might be there. Then there are certain issues which are always there. For example, the board members are not elected many times. The board members, sometimes they are the ones who are also political heavyweights. They might also be holding different kinds of government positions. So they have tremendous amount of power. So what they will do, they will try to ensure that the elections are not held frequently, so that they continue to hold these positions regularly. Ideally, cooperatives should be audited. Who will audit it? Again, the government has to audit the cooperatives. But these audits also don't happen. So as a result of which, transparency, accountability, all these things go for a toss. Audit record, all these things might not be maintained. When the cooperatives give loans to people, they should ideally look at the credit worthiness of an individual. They should look at whether this person is fit to be given loan, whether this person should be able to repay the loan. But many times within these cooperatives, there will be some form of political patronage. As a result of which, all these rules and regulations they might not follow. As a result of which, what will happen? They might give loans to individuals who might not be credit worthy. All these leads to increase in losses for the cooperatives. And many of these cooperatives are sick. They're not viable. They cannot. I mean, without government support, they might not even exist. And ideally, keep in mind, cooperatives should be business organizations. They should be institutions, economic institutions. They should not be running at the mercy of the government. But that is what has happened because of the way cooperatives have been operated. There is massive politicization. So many times, what happens? Those who are in the government, right, they will appoint someone within the board of the cooperatives, right? As a result of which, this official who has been appointed by the government, that official will now have a significant power. So the government will operate the cooperatives. It will decide the day-to-day activities of the cooperatives. Many times, through the cooperatives, funds are channelized to people. So again, this is a very significant or very easy tool to influence public behavior. During the time of elections, generally what will happen? The number of members of cooperatives will increase. How? Why? See, these cooperatives ideally should be politically neutral, but that is not the case. Some cooperatives will be affiliated to certain political organizations, political outfits. Membership will increase, and after elections, maybe they will be given different kinds of rewards. Money might be given to them, and again, without any expectation of returns. Elections, as I mentioned, might not always happen. They're irregular. Loans, only half of the institutional loans are owned by rural households. The loans from the cooperatives, many times it goes to already affluent people. Ideally, cooperatives should have given loans to those who are extremely vulnerable. That is not the case. And there has not been much reforms within the cooperatives. And usually you will not find a lot of activism. It's not that civil society organizations are coming out and they're holding these cooperatives accountable, or they're questioning the cooperatives. Usually not much civil society activism around cooperatives. So all these are different kinds of problems that we see with cooperatives. Some sociologists have again looked at the internal dynamics within cooperatives, and they have also identified some problems. Some of them, they have also been very optimistic about cooperatives. For example, A.R. Desai, Marxist thinker, according to A.R. Desai, cooperatives can have a massive role to play. A.R. Desai assumes that cooperatives can go hand in hand with land reforms. So land reforms have not been completely successful. Maybe if you promote cooperatives, right? So both land reforms as well as cooperatives both will benefit. So whatever are the problems associated with the agrarian social order, which is highly inequitable, there is massive amount of hierarchy, can be addressed through cooperatives. This is what AR Desai thinks. But as I mentioned, not everyone agrees with him. Chaturvedi says that yes, there has definitely been expansion of cooperatives. The number of cooperatives have definitely gone up, but partial success is there. Landless, poor people, they are not benefiting. Within cooperatives also you have now power structures. Within cooperatives also you have class structures. Usually those who are the powerful ones, those who have access to more resources, they are the ones who are pocketing all the benefits. The poor landless, they're not getting any benefit. Similar kind of thoughts are also echoed by some other thinkers. Bhavishkar, he had studied cooperatives in Maharashtra. Bhavishkar says that within cooperatives there is power conflict. There are people who they want to acquire more power. So many times, once they are in the board, they might have, let's say in the board there are two different poles, right? One will have certain political objectives, another will have another political objectives. So they will not get along together. Ideally, what should the board be doing? It should be thinking about the long-term vision of the cooperatives. How can we get things done? Where should we reach? But if within that board you have people who are fighting for power, they will not the other succeed. They will not help the other succeed. They will not let the other succeed. They will always be fighting with one another. And as a result of which, what happens? The functioning of the cooperatives gets impacted. As a result of which, the growth expansion of cooperatives gets impacted. Daniel Thornton studied cooperatives in Gujarat, and Daniel Thornton found out that within cooperatives, again, different kinds of caste dynamics are at play. He found out that there are certain families which are dominating the cooperatives. So there are some families, they are the ones who are holding on to power within cooperatives, right? So what we had thought, cooperatives are grassroots organization. People from the grassroots level, they are all equal partners in the cooperatives. It is democratic, but that is what is not happening. It is becoming an institution which is held by some family members, right? So the point is, the way cooperatives have been visualized, maybe they have not been able to fulfill that exact role. So these are some of the issues and perspectives. Now, what can be some solutions here? So some solutions I've included it. First is, see, there's a problem of governance. Usually what happens is, you have the general body, which includes all the members of the cooperatives. Then you have the board, the general body, which has all the members, it appoints the board. The board then runs the cooperative. All the long-term vision and all those things, they will plan. They will decide how much should the cooperative produce, what they should produce, how much profit they should make. But keep in mind, the board again will not be having that expertise that you might not have enough technocrats in the board. So what the board does is, it hires people. It hires people from outside, from the markets. Maybe managers, executives, MBAs, technocrats, they will hire. And these people will carry out different activities. For example, the Amul cooperative, right? Cooperative of dairy farmers. But at the end of the day, you need different kind of professionals, right? People who understand logistics, people who understand different kinds of food technology, people who understand marketing. Right? So they're all paid executives. Now what happens is, many times the board and the paid executives, they clash. So ideally these kind of clashes need to be resolved. The day-to-day operation should be carried out by the paid executives. The board should look at the long-term goals. So these governance problems can be solved if you are defining the roles and responsibilities clearly. One issue that we saw was regular elections are not there. Some people are in the board, they continue to remain in the board. They are the political guys. So if you have some form of tenure kind of thing, that you cannot remain in this office after this point of time, you have to be retired. That can ensure more accountability. Then there has to be some form of restrictions when it comes to contribution to different political organizations, religious organizations. Cooperatives and political religious organizations, they should remain apart. Many times the governments will have equity in cooperatives. They will give funds to the cooperatives. But in return, what will happen? They will control the cooperatives. They will say that, okay, we have 25% of your corpus is coming from us. So in your board, if there are 10 members, 25% of that will be from the government, 2 to 3 members will be from the government. And that way the government controls the operations of the cooperatives. And as a result of which, the freedom and autonomy of the cooperatives gets impacted. So ideally, the cooperatives should reduce the dependence on government. They should themselves find out different ways to raise their own revenue. They should ideally find out different ways by which resources can be raised so that their dependence on government is not there. Government should only have some designated official in the cooperative only when the cooperatives request for it. And in that case, also have some minimum tenure. That, okay, for 3 years, this official will be here, after that, he will not be there. Cooperatives should have greater flexibility in both the things. What kind of resources they're hiring, what kind of incentives they will provide them, what kind of recruitment scheme policies there. They should also have more flexibility when it comes to business decisions. At this point of time, they don't have that flexibility. In fact, they don't even have flexibility when it comes to raising resources. So one of the things that we visualized about cooperatives was they will be economic institutions. Just like any other economic institution, they should be the same. But that has not happened. They're not treated like any other economic institution. As a result of it, their performance gets impacted. So if cooperatives are visualized as any other economic institution, they should also be given all these freedom. Periodic evaluation of cooperatives should happen. If they are not performing, if they're not serving any utility, then again, you have to think about it. Also, different kinds of financial instruments have to be devised so that cooperatives have greater access to finance. So these are some potential solutions for the cooperative sector. Right? Some of the cooperatives are sick, they are not viable, they're not fulfilling the purpose, they have not acted as a channel for people's upliftment, they have become institutions for political patronage, they have become institutions by which different kinds of political purposes are being fulfilled. So all these things need to be addressed. What can be some of the ways? These are some of the ways. Examine the working of cooperatives in India, give suggestions to improve the weakness in the working of cooperatives. Right? So we already know about it, issues and potential solutions.